Before we jump into today's episode, I want to tell you about Reliht. Reliht is a brand new web and mobile app, one without distractions of social scrolling and chat. If you're a content creator, coach, mentor, writer, author, teacher, or leader, Reliht gives you a dedicated space to capture what God is speaking, organize your content, and share it with those you lead. Ready to create and share God notes with your followers? As a special launch welcome, sign up is free through September 1st, 2026. Visit reliht.com to get started today. That's spelled Reliht, no G. Welcome to the Hope Unlocked podcast. I'm Kristin Kurtz, your host. I pray this episode is like a holy IV of hope for your soul. Please help me welcome Greg Pai to the show. I'm so excited to have him here today. We just got to know each other like super fast before I hit record, and he is going to be such a joy to you guys today. So before we get into it, would you just be open to sharing a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you, Kristen. And I hope I live up to that introduction.
It's going to be
I'm,
amazing.
I'm very excited about this. So, first of all, I want to thank you again and thank your audience because time is precious. It's really
Yeah.
all we have at the end of the day. And I want to make sure that it's well spent with this conversation.
Yes.
So, I think I promised you earlier that I would give you, I could talk about my life for
Mhm.
hours on end, I think there's one soundbite and
Mhm.
maybe it will resonate with your audience. My life was a think of a puzzle box, a puzzle
Mhm.
with a box with no cover on it.
Oh
If
dear.
you've ever gotten one of those. And not only that, the corner's missing. So
Oh no.
and the edges, right?
Oh
And
no.
over my several years of life, the box had these pieces and I'd pull one out or find one at a time, and it never formed a picture until
Mm.
a much later point in my life after I've done pretty much everything that most people would want to have done. I've seen both sides of the tracks. I was raised in poverty in the
Mhm.
Bronx, New York, single parent,
Mhm.
diversified background across race,
Mhm.
religion, culture, very complex, living in poverty. But then my mother marries a doctor who was from India,
Okay.
adding additional diversity and complexity. And we moved to New Jersey, and my life changes financially. And I end up
Mhm.
being able to have things that I didn't have before. Not that that really mattered, but in this world, we think it does.
Right.
But and I was, you know, I started off as kind of a semi-normal child, but as I
Mm.
grew up, I found that I was very much isolated from the world. So because I was raised in in a very poor neighborhood. My mother was very protective, and we lived with my grandparents. And my only companion was my uncle, who was suffering from Down syndrome and lived with us.
Okay.
But it was interesting because the relationship, the world looks at people that have a quote unquote disability. I don't ever call it a disability. I call it an ability that God hasn't shown that particular
Mhm.
person or the world what that gift is so ultimately supposed to manifest.
Yeah.
But for me, he was the most important person in my life besides my mother because my the role modeling and the sort of interplay with him. I used to read to him, so I started reading at a very early age. I used to pretend with him, so I started creating my imaginary world that I lived in that was separate and apart from the world that everyone else lives in, which is filled with
Mhm.
noise. So
Mhm.
because of that, I started seeing patterns and recognizing patterns that others didn't that would ultimately yield where I am today. So,
Mhm.
fast forward, I had difficulty in school. I was very smart, but the educational system I realized was not built for
Oh,
me.
yeah.
And so I ended up I actually was one of the youngest, I think the youngest attendee at Berklee College of Music. I went when I was 14 to a summer program,
Mhm.
and I was an accomplished pianist at that point. And then photography was a passion, but then I went I wanted to go into music, but my parents wanted me to do something professional. So I went to University of Maryland for
Mhm.
engineering, and I bounced around. I never graduated from school,
Okay.
but I did end up getting hired by Price Waterhouse. I became a consultant, and then I had careers really at the highest levels of consulting,
Mhm.
law, technology, entertainment,
Mm.
finance, and
Mhm.
more. And today,
Wow.
being an author and a publisher. So
Wow.
I've been blessed. right?
Yeah.
But the more I got and the more acclamation and the more accreditation and the more money,
Mm-hmm.
the more tragedy I
Mm.
experienced in my heart, like a real brokenheartedness, a separation from who I was
Wow.
and a separation from the world. It was kind of like a trifecta.
Wow.
And I think that that feeling a lot of your audience can resonate with. I
Mm-hmm.
think separation from reality. I think
Mm-hmm.
separation from what makes us, what brings us joy,
Mm-hmm.
and separation from one another
Yeah.
is a crisis of humanity.
Yeah.
We know, Kristin, and your audience, many in your audience know that Jesus is the truth and the way and the light. But
Mm-hmm.
even knowing that, living it
Yeah.
is in this world is complex.
It is absolutely. I want to go back for a second. I know you mentioned, school. I just want to touch on this really quick because I'm curious. For you, for school, just even let's just say like elementary, middle school, high school, even, what was most challenging for you?
Hmm. Sitting still in a classroom. In my book,
Yeah.
I talk
Yeah.
about, I don't know if this is the case anymore. My kids are grown, but in my book, I talk about the system of education along with all the other systems of the world
Mm-hmm.
and why the chairs are riveted into the desk. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and it's kind of like a metaphor for what the
Yeah.
system wants to do, which is to keep us pointing forward and
Yeah.
not having peripheral vision. I
Mm-hmm.
was a student of so many things. By the time I was 13, 14 years old, I knew
Mm-hmm.
so much about the world. I had known more history about the Vietnam War than
Mm-hmm.
people who had served in the war,
Oh, wow.
things that are now coming out about the
Mm-hmm.
CIA's involvement and stuff. I've been reading this stuff. I have these books to this
Mm-hmm.
day. So a lot of them are out of print, not surprisingly, but I was very wise to the world. So my education was alternative education. And the more that the school let me down, the system of
Mm-hmm.
education,
Mm-hmm.
the more I was pushed into these alternative approaches of learning, which, by the
Yeah.
way, is, critical thinking is absent from the educational system today. I speak to a
Oh,
lot of
really?
homeschool moms, and I
Mm-hmm.
tell them the biggest danger of homeschooling is that you take your kids out of the school only
Mm-hmm.
to recreate the same system at home.
Mm-hmm.
And that, they're and I listen, I give moms that are doing this, it's mostly moms, but it's also some men too. But
Mm-hmm.
I give them a lot of credit because it takes a
Yeah.
lot to go and make that move. But they need to
Yeah.
understand why they're making that move. And they need to
Mm-hmm.
reimagine the system that their kids are put in. So, short answer to your question,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was a round peg in a square hole. Today,
Yeah.
I would say
Yeah.
80% of these kids are round pegs with no holes. I have one
Yeah.
saying, and then I'll be quiet for a second. They
Yeah.
teach our kids, they want to teach our kids to think outside of the box,
Mm-hmm.
but they haven't taught them how to find the box.
That's the key right there, isn't it?
Hmm.
Right? And
Yeah.
were you a talker? Did you get in trouble? Did you get in trouble
Yeah,
in school like I
I
did? I got
did.
in trouble all the time for talking too much,
I
for
did.
asking
I mean,
questions. Ever hear something on this show that stirs something deep, like a nudge from God that there's more? That's stirring. It's not random. I'm Kristin Kurtz, host of Hope Unlocked and the founder of New Wings Coaching, and I'm inviting you into a 45-minute unlocking session, a sacred space to press in, hear what heaven is saying, and activate your next bold step. If you're a trailblazer or kingdom voice ready to break free from doubt and live fully alive, this is for you. Book now at newwingscoaching.net/hopeunlocked for special listener pricing. You were born to live uncaged and unapologetically bold. Now back to the show.
yeah, I did more than that. I was a bad good kid. It's kind of like
Okay.
my children. I have four beautiful children, and they
Mhm.
never got in trouble, really. I used to tell them, come on, can't you get arrested or something? I mean, come on.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. I mean, my daughter who now has a child, 10 months old, so she's going to get hers. She now confessed to me, Daddy, I used to sneak out at night because I used to do a test with her. I used to say, Kristen, raise your hands, your arms up over your head. And if I can see your midriff, you got to go up and change.
Yeah.
So I'd send her up and change. But what she didn't tell me was that she had the same top in her pocket.
Okay.
So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
She was up to no good.
yeah. But yeah, definitely a talker. And
Yeah.
I was that energy. I
Yeah.
still am. Oh, it's
Hmm.
so weird. Like my wife and I go out. I'm not a celebrity. I work for
Yeah.
celebrities, but
Hmm.
I go out. We go out and people come up to me. They
Hmm.
say, "Hey, I just looking at you and your wife, the way you are together, or the way you look at her, or the way she looks at you, or
Oh,
the way you talk to the waitress." And
yeah.
I just had to say, wow, we get that all the time. And
Wow. Amazing.
that's not, yeah, well, we all carry this. And
Yeah.
again, the framework that I built is about unleashing that passion in everybody that's a light. It's biblical. I mean, it's not something
Yeah.
special to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us more about this, this framework that you are briefly mentioning here, because I'm sure somebody's like, well, wow, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So it's called Voice of the Heart.
Hmm.
It came, so my wife and I were saved at the same time, the same moment in time. It was 9:16 a.m. Eastern Time on February 12th, 2012, Sunday.
Okay.
We were sitting in the second to last row of a very large church that had two levels. It was
Okay.
the last time we ever sat that far from the front. We now sit in the second row. Part of it's
Okay.
because I can't see.
Okay. Now,
And
why were you way in the back in the first
well,
place?
this is what happened. Our youngest son, we were very protective
Yeah.
of our kids, but our youngest son had an opportunity to have a sleepover. We didn't want
Hmm.
to do it, but something said do it. And I was at a point in my life personally, had like anyone looking at me would say, boy, I want to be him. He's got everything. He's got a beautiful wife. He's got money. He's got the house, the cars, and everything,
Hmm.
and traveling all the time.
Hmm.
But I was severely depressed. I mean,
Hmm.
I would if I could, if I had the guts, I would have taken my own life.
Really?
So, and even though my wife and I have always had a great relationship, we were carrying that weight,
Hmm.
and I was carrying it and
Yeah.
into the relationship. So our son got to sleep over at the house that night, and this friend's house. And so we
Hmm.
woke up Sunday morning. We're looking at each other, and we're like, "What should we do?" And I said, let's go to church." She's like,
Hmm.
"What?" I said, "Yeah, let's go to church." And she said, "Where do you want to go?" I said, "Now the first thought, we got married in a Greek Orthodox church,
Okay.
but our first thought was, let me go to this Catholic church down the road." But no,
Hmm.
there was this church that somebody told me about that was about 30 minutes away, and I used to live pretty close to, called
Okay.
Hawthorne Gospel Church. And the name gospel in it would frighten anybody that was not a Christian. But I
Right.
said, there's something crazy about this place. Every time I would drive by it on Sunday, there were cars lined up along the highway. There was no parking. So I said, that's,
Oh.
coming from the voice of the world. I want
Hmm.
that it was important to me. Hey, it's a
Yeah.
church.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to go there. Probably like a concert.
Right.
Is this you two performing or whatever?
Right. Right.
And so we went
Hmm.
and we walked in, and everybody, look, people are like extra nice. That's probably the problem with Christianity is
Hmm.
is people
Like
who
being too
are,
nice?
yeah, so I've traveled the world, and I have wonderful experiences. Like people will come up and invite you to dinner that don't know you, or to have tea. It's a very
Hmm.
natural thing. But there's something
Yeah.
that feels very superficial about a
Okay.
Christian and a non-Christian coming together, because
Hmm.
and neither one of them are wrong, but the Christian can't wait to share the love of Jesus.
Hmm.
And I'm thinking that it's not like that really. It's like when Jesus came up to his disciples and said, "Follow me." It was that simple. It was kind of like a
Yeah.
command.
Yeah.
Now, if someone said, "Follow me," I probably would say, "Well, where are we going? Going to get some
Yeah.
donuts or something?" But but it felt weird, but it
Yeah.
felt warm. So
Mm.
we go and we sat in the back because we felt like the closer we sat, the
Mhm.
more weird it would have gotten.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
for sure.
at 9:16, the pastor was just he wasn't even an altar call. Not that I
Mm.
would have known what that was anyway.
Yeah.
We just were sitting listening to him, and we got down on our knees and we're crying hysterically. And we
Oh.
said, just said, Jesus, we're yours. Take us. It was crazy.
Wow. What a like supernatural experience, like
Oh,
for both of
as
you
I
at the
talk to you
same
about it, I
time.
feel like I'm actually leaving my chair. Was
Right.
that bizarre.
Yeah.
But, but it, yeah,
Like
go ahead.
what would you say to each other after that? Like
We
and
were,
were you to both at the same time? Were you looking at each other or you
we were
just both kind of
trembling,
like,
looking at each other and holding each other like we'd never held each other before. And
oh,
I felt so relieved. My pastor yesterday, who's an amazing, yeah, we go to Victory Church in Boca Raton now.
okay.
And Pastor Donnie is one of the most gifted, one of the most talented pastors I know. He's a young guy,
Hmm.
but he was talking yesterday about, I love the way he just, because the church is mostly young kids, they're
Yeah.
college kids and whatnot, which is great to
Okay.
see. But he
Yeah.
was talking yesterday about the chains that,
Mm.
we walk around as Christians and we just say, you know what, just loosen the chains a little bit so they're not so tight. He said, no, 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 no. Break the chains.
Yeah.
Break the
Yeah.
chains.
Yeah.
And that's what it felt like. It felt
Mm.
like, oh my goodness, I probably could have lost everything at that moment. And by the way, that's
Hmm.
exactly what started to happen.
Really?
Everything, well, both through my own and just involuntarily, we started to
Okay.
get weaned of all of that stuff of the world, even our
Queens of the
friends.
world.
Oh yeah. I had a couple of buddies that I used to golf with every Sunday, and they had heard, that I was going to this church now because we started going, and one of
Hmm.
them broke down. He said, "Please stop going there. It's a cult, and you're going to change." And he was
Oh
right
no.
about the latter. That
Greg's
we're
gonna
going to change.
change. That's too bad. I mean,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that's really, I think it's a fear for people, right?
Mm,
Who,
I don't think people know it at first when they go. Like I said to you before, that day we were saved. We went to
mhm.
because it's a big church with a big campus. We went to the bookstore and we bought 60 Bibles. And I always joke with people. I said,
Yeah.
we bought all these Bibles because we said, we got to share this.
Yeah.
Because I was a giver, but the wrong kind of
Yeah.
giver. But I was a
Mm.
giver and I said, I'm going to get 60 Bibles and give them out. And I always joke and tell people that we ended up at the end of the day with 61. It's an
Yeah.
experience.
Hmm.
Why is it called a testimony? Testimony is the most valuable weapon we have against evil,
Really.
the
Yeah.
enemy, and
Yes.
against ourselves, because
Hmm.
we need to always go back to that moment and we need to
Yeah.
hold on to it for dear life because it is
Yeah.
so precious, right?
It is. Absolutely. I like to call it reminded to remember, right? So we don't want to go
Mm,
back and like stay. We don't want to stay
yeah,
in things. We
yeah.
can go back and be reminded of that. Can I
You
ask
do
like
like my
how
daughter
old?
does. Yeah, yeah, my daughter writes them on and she puts them on the bathroom walls and stuff. And she just, yeah, go ahead. You were going to ask
Well,
how
I was just
old?
going to ask, how old were you two when
Mhm.
you got, saved radically?
So we were, no, we were in our late
You don't have
40s, I guess.
late
Like,
40s? Okay.
or 50, 51, 52.
Okay.
I hope I don't lose half your audience now, but you know what?
Nope. I
Age is
know
wisdom.
it is.
And
And I
don't believe
think
me,
like
ask Solomon.
I honestly, Greg, to be honest with you, like I actually love hearing from the older generations
Yeah,
that have
it's
had
important.
those, I'll just an example, a lady came to me and she's like, "Hey, can I be on your podcast? I just wrote my first book. I'm 82." Yes,
Mm-hmm.
please. Right? So
Yeah.
it's all relative. But I
And it's
did want to
part of
hear
what's,
because that's
yeah.
a
So, and it's,
long life. That's a long life to live
yeah,
prior to being saved, right?
right. And it's also my story, my personal story is woven through the 30
Mhm.
chapters, 500 pages of the master book, which is called Voice of the Heart, which sits at the center. So
Voice
you
of
were
the
asking
heart.
me how we got, yeah. So you were asking me how
Yeah.
did we get to this franchise or this framework? So this is what happened. We got saved on February 12th, 2012. Within 3 months,
Hmm.
I found myself as part of the worship team and leading worship because I was musical and sing
Okay.
and play piano, whatnot. And that was extraordinary. I mean, I'm experiencing life at a whole nother frequency now. And so is
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
family, so is my wife, at least. The kids were
Mhm.
still kind of, meandering. Then within a few months thereafter, through happenstance, like it was really another God God shot where God was working behind the scenes as he had always been working. Because when you know my full story, like when you read the book, you're like, oh my goodness, this is like a novel in and of itself. But it's not there to be the novel. It's there to add the continuity and the substance of why I was writing this book. But God had been working. And, when we don't see it, he's working, right? So the next thing I know is my wife and I are in Africa, and we are in Nairobi working with African Inland Missions. And we're not working with them as part of them. I'm providing all the experience I had and network and resources to help them and their people in the field create businesses that would go mostly into what they call the 1040 window, which is the latitudinal spectrum around the globe where there's about 3 billion people who have not heard the name of Jesus. And the reason for that is because of mostly cultural and political opposition. So we're talking about countries like Libya and Morocco, places where people even vacation, right? And in the Middle East. But walking around and proselytizing or sharing your testimony is either illegal, culturally taboo, or can get you killed. And so that's what we were doing. Yeah, because we had nothing better to do. We wanted to risk our lives. And we were in we were actually in Kenya right the week after the Nairobi attack. In fact, there's the movie that was our very people we were staying with. That was the family. They had 5 kids that were in that mall, and the movie that HBO did was about them. And so we've been in many situations, but never scared, because
Never
can't be scared. Can't be scared to share the gospel. That is the weapon. And so what happened was we were in Kenya one trip. And what's really crazy? In a lot of these countries, like if you go to Dubai, which we were many times, there are more Christmas trees. Not that, and believe me, I'm not about the sort of the archetype of commercialism of religion, but in terms of recognizing Christmas, there are more Christmas trees in Dubai than you would find in places in Manhattan, because in this country, we know what, God is under attack. So it's an interesting phenomenon. But so we're in Kenya, and we're going out in the Masai Mara, which is a beautiful place if you want to go safari. But we were actually going to visit a one-room schoolhouse. And it was about sunset. And my wife said, hey, because, I'm a photographer too. And so she said, hey, look at this sunset. It's awesome. There's an acacia tree of all trees. For your audience that does not necessarily know this, the Ark of the Covenant was built out of acacia. So it's a very precious wood, obviously. I also think that the Ark, Noah's Ark, was acacia. But anyway, an acacia tree, lone acacia tree in the distance, under the sun, with a falling drape of blue and gold and yellow that was majestic. And I took a picture of it. It's called the Tree of Light. It's been everywhere. It's been in museums around the world. It's been in galleries. And it is an awesome picture. And it is glorious and beautiful. And I shot it, but I didn't create it. I know who created it.
That's good. Yeah.
But here's the thing. We're flying back, and I'm looking at this picture on the back of the camera, and it goes from, wow, this is an amazing picture, to this really bothers me. There's something really troubling about this picture, so much so that I started getting like anxiety attacks over it. And then I realized something. It occurred to me that the picture was talking to me, and it said that everything under the sun and everything above it has been created with a cycle of purpose and fulfillment by the Creator. Everything has this perfect cycle and resonance with one another, with the totality of creation, except for one thing. Because I saw this tree out there, and this tree is thriving in the desert, basically, by itself. And at the same time, while being alone, it is glorifying this majestic scenery. And I said, the only thing that falls out of that favor is mankind. Mankind is in a disconnected cycle of purpose and fulfillment. It's disconnected. And I realized that the connected view, what does the connected view look like? It looks like the Garden of Eden. It looks like the way God created us and why he created us and the circumstances under which he created us. And the last command And I want every Christian to hear this.
Yeah.
The last command he gave to Adam and Eve, be fruitful and multiply. He didn't say be fruitful so that you're fruitful and don't worry about multiplying or don't worry about those you multiply. He said be fruitful and multiply because we are here for him.
Yeah.
And I realized that there's an attack on humanity and there's an attack on the individual. And it manifested into this invisible war that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And the ones that talk about it don't know quite where the war is. And what this Voice of the Heart framework does is it categorizes two voices, the voice of the heart and the voice of the world, and what they sound like, how they manifest, and how they're destroying our purpose, peace, and passion, what I call the command centers.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Take us on a little bit of a journey into this framework a little deeper if you're open to doing that. Would you mind?
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
those who maybe are being awakened right now to because I feel like I've been awakened over the last decade, especially with systems.
Yeah.
This is your channel today to talk on, but I've come out of the Lord kept saying, cut the cord to the systems years ago to me.
Oh,
it's almost like an umbilical cord. And so would you maybe even share some of the revelations that you've received and then take us a little deeper into the framework?
So I love that you use that particular illustration of a umbilical cord. That's going to make sense in a second. So there's the war, or this Voice of the Heart framework, has 4 foundational building blocks. And by the way, this is not a compromise of scripture. It's a strategy, and you'll hear why and how it's a strategy momentarily. So the 4 components include, number 1, recognition of the invisible war. See, I came to the conclusion, and now this is a couple weeks later, and I started writing notes, hundreds and then eventually thousands of pages of notes, putting my historical experience to putting glue around it. In fact, what I would say is starting to form a picture on the puzzle box. And I came to this conclusion that there were 2 types of people on this earth. Those who are openly struggling emotionally, mentally, financially, physically, spiritually. We find that most of those, or many of those, will eventually come to the altar. They will be on their knees and give their life to Jesus. This includes the oppressed, the enslaved, the dependent, you name it. There's certainly no shortage of them. So that's the one group of people. The other group of people is everybody else who doesn't know that they're struggling. So it's like you're struggling and you know it, or you're struggling and you don't know it. And I was in both camps, so I know that is not impossible. And in fact, I know it's pervasive because I've been around, people that read the book will know more about my professional history. I've worked with the biggest names in business and the biggest names in entertainment. Yeah. And I've been involved in some of some paradigm shifting industries. I've been at the center of them. But, it's hard for people to see that war because it assumes that, number one, you got to kind of make a confession or you got to look in a mirror. And it does. So you got to look in the mirror and you got to be honest with yourself. And then you got to realize that there's an enemy. Now, some Christians will say, okay, the enemy's Satan. It's true. But we also should know that under that guise, Satan has he has an army, 1/3 of heaven, in fact, of the angels. So there's minions, and he operates he operates under the authority of God, but he does operate, and he is pervasive. We're going to talk about how that is. But I always say, I did a podcast not too long ago, and they said, well, why don't you just name it in the book? And I said, well, there's a number of reasons, because I want non-Christians, I want everybody to read the book because the book is for everybody. But the other thing is something very interesting about naming the enemy. The enemy wants us to name him because when we name him, we limit his pervasiveness. We limit his presence and his impact on our lives. Think of it this way: you got this terrible boss, and so you attribute everything to him. You say life stinks because I got to go to work every day and I work for this boss, and the boss becomes your enemy. But you know what? It distracts you from all of everything else that's led you up to making the decisions to, number one, work for that person, stay working for that person. People who are in abusive relationships should know this, that the abuser is not their enemy. In fact, they're just as much a victim. We're going to learn that too. But your circumstances are far more complex than a single enemy. So I don't like just calling that person or that force a single, because I will tell you too, if I start saying Satan, I've eliminated half the population who doesn't believe in God. You know? So here's the thing. There's an enemy, there's a force, whatever you want to call it, there's a force that wants to disrupt our purpose, peace, and passion. And the other part of this, that in this first building block about recognizing the invisible war, is that people don't necessarily want the bad news while they're consuming it all day and night on TV and other media. They don't want, so they always say to me, Greg, whenever you talk about this war, you're such a pessimist. You see the glass as half empty. And you know what I tell them? I tell them, I don't see the glass as half empty or half full. I just don't see the glass. And let me tell you why I don't see the glass. Because I don't believe that we were designed to have a half anything. I believe we were supposed to have an overflowing bucket of life. Amen. And that's why I don't go there. Amen, right? And then the last piece of this over here, because I know this is like drinking out of a fire hydrant listening to this, but the voices. So I didn't want to name the enemy, but I needed to sort of classify them. So the enemy is the voice of the world. Who is the voice of the world? It's basically, no, I don't need a psychiatrist. Well, maybe I do need a psychiatrist, but I don't need one for voices. We do have voices. We have the voices in our head, the voices in our heart, the subliminal, the subconscious, the conscious. We have voices that speak to us. We have people we trust, that we listen to. We have political voices that we listen to, that we enslave ourselves to. There are voices of the world. Those are all the voices of the world. The alternative is the voice of the heart. How do we know the voice of the heart? Well, as a Christian, our pastors will tell us it's the Holy Spirit. And he's correct, or she's correct. But what is that? What does that sound like? Well, this is how you know what it is. The voice of the world is loud, and the voice of the heart whispers, because the voice of the heart does not need to compete with the voice of the world.
Say that again.
The voice of the world is loud. In my children's book series, the voice of the world is personified by a character called the noise. Capital N, capital O, capital I, capital Z, capital E, the noise. The voice of the heart is a whisper. The voice of the heart in the children's series is a character called Hartwell, who is just a worn out well in the corner, but his bucket's different. He's got a heart bucket that goes down into the ground because things that are good, I call it things that stay, things that are substantive, they come from deep and they come from quiet. So, this metaphysical, if you want to be a metaphysicist or whatever, they'll tell you, you can't do it in a crowded room. You got to go, you got to be relegated to a quiet room with certain kind of lighting and everything. There is a common denominator here. And that is that God is omnipresent. He's everywhere all the time. But the world, Satan, whatever you want to call him, they have to create a frequency of distraction and distortion so that you do not have any view to that opportunity to know him and meet him. So it's a whisper. And that's what's important about it. We know as musicians, it's not what you hear that attracts somebody to a particular song. It's the overtones. It's the frequencies that are there and present, but you can't hear them audibly. And so that is what the voice of the heart is. And you got to train yourself to listen to that. So that's the war. That's block number one. Block number two, Kristin, is really cool. As Christians, we want to go from whatever we were, we want to go to a selfless life. We want to go to a place where we give. Now, I was a giver. Even way before I was a Christian.
Oh, yeah.
So what happens when you give?
It's natural.
Yeah. The two things happen when you're a giver. Number one, you find that you're giving for the wrong reasons.
Mm.
And number two, you exhaust yourself and you leave nothing left for yourself.
Yeah, that's
So
a
as a
big.
giver, now I have a quote in the book that picks up on an old adage. Don't
Mm-hmm.
give a man a fish. Don't teach a man a fish.
Mm-hmm.
Ask him if he even wants fish. And
Mm,
so when I
that's
was giving
good.
for myself and I was giving because, when you give to people, like if you have money and you give it to them, they end up really resenting you. You don't know that yet. And they
Mm,
do want the money, but they
mm,
don't like you much
mm.
because they're dependent on you.
Wow.
So the one extreme is being a giver. The other extreme is being a hoarder. Like a lot of people, a lot of Christians even will say, I'm wealthy. I'm collecting my money because I'm going to be, we know the parable of the talents. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
collecting money because I want to do kingdom type of things and I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
allocate it responsibly. And they almost over engineer
Yeah.
God's plan in their life. And so they become hoarders or takers,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the other extreme. So self sacrificers and selfish or self helpers. So people go, do you know the biggest growing section in the bookstore is the self help section?
Right. Right. I
But
bet.
self help is useless. I have
Mm.
another saying in the book. If you're at the bottom of a broken Ferris wheel, you can be thankful,
Mm.
but you can never ride that Ferris wheel again until the people at the top are brought safely down.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's heavy duty, Kristin.
Wow.
That's why it takes people
That's
30
so
days
good.
to
Like
get through
my
chapter one.
brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But this is the thing. So think of the metaphors, the wheel is the system. So like
Mm-hmm.
people look at education. So we got a whole bunch of
Yeah.
people homeschooling now.
Mm-hmm.
But we
Mm-hmm.
still, what's the sense in homeschooling your children if the other half of the children are in public school?
Right.
Eventually
Right.
the two shall meet.
I gotta
So
intermingle.
exactly. And so here's the thing. It's not self-help. It's not self-sacrifice. It's not
Mm-hmm.
selfishness. It's the thing I call selfless help. Selfless help is the act of solving a problem for yourself, but at the same time, in parallel, solving it for others,
Mm-hmm.
one or
Mm-hmm.
more people. Now, we
Right.
know this works because we know people who are like whistleblowers, or,
Mm-hmm.
I use a story of Rosa Parks,
Yeah.
who was relegated to, the prejudicial the awful prejudicial state of our country many,
Mm-hmm.
many years ago. It's still, we've never stopped being prejudiced. We're
Mm-hmm.
prejudiced against everybody at the end of the day,
Yeah.
whether you have wealth or whatever. But, African Americans were obviously enslaved in this society, legally enslaved. And
Mm.
she had to go to the back of the bus until one day she decided she wasn't. But she didn't do it
Yeah.
just for her. She wasn't looking for a better seat. She was looking for a better world. And she made
Right.
that choice. There's
Mm-hmm.
people, like Eric Snowden, and I'm not political and I don't, I'm not judging people whether they did something right or wrong. What I'm
Yeah.
saying is examine what their intentions were, why they did what
Right.
they did,
Right.
revealing, certain things about systems that are harming people.
Right.
That takes, you're not just solving it for yourself. In fact, you're going to a place of danger for yourself in order to make
Exactly.
for a better life for yourself. So this
Yeah.
third and the fourth, I'm going to kind of run through these real quick. The third is the infiltration of the enemy into 12 systems, which metaphorically tie into what I call the tree of life. There's the
Mm-hmm.
soil systems. Each part of the tree has three systems associated with it. The soil
Mm-hmm.
systems, which are the systems of family dynamics, education, and religion. Those are systems, big ones,
Mm-hmm.
because that's where your roots are planted. The
Yeah.
second group of systems are the trunk systems. So think about whatever's in the soil, and how bad the soil was, and feeds up through the roots, now
Mm-hmm.
goes through the trunk. The trunk systems are the influence systems, media and
Mm-hmm.
entertainment, news and information, technology
Yeah.
and data. So whatever kind of mess you had in the soil ends up getting amplified by those
Mm-hmm.
systems. The third set
Mm-hmm.
of systems are the trunk systems. I'm sorry, the branch systems. The branch systems are how we reach into society. Anyone that knows anything, I'm not a horticulturalist, agriculturist.
Yeah.
I know very
You're
little
doing
about
pretty well
anything
here.
like that. Yeah, yeah. But if you think about the California redwoods and
Yeah.
they're dependent on each other because they're
Yeah.
interconnected underground to keep from
Yeah.
falling
The
over.
root.
And
Mm-hmm.
but think about our branches. How do our branches grow in society? They grow over each other. They grow to kind of starve the sunlight out of others. So those systems are finance, government, and social structures. And then the
Good.
last group of systems are the legacy systems. But don't think about legacy as a Christian per se. Think about it as a child of God.
Mhm.
Remember what I said earlier, the last commandment, be fruitful and multiply. So the legacy systems are about the ability to multiply and to
Mhm.
thrive as a humanity for the one and only reason we're here, which is to worship God. And so
Mhm.
those systems are health and wellness,
Mhm.
order and justice, which is freedom, and the last is the military industrial complex.
Mhm.
You know,
Wow.
and they're all interconnected. And if you don't believe
Yeah.
me, anyone that remembers COVID and other situations
Mhm.
you'll see how the contagion from one system to the other is designed to just destroy us. Then the
Destroy.
last block, Kristen, and I'll take a breath,
Mhm.
is the other roles that we play. And we kind of touched on this before. We're
Mhm.
all victims in this war. But this
Mhm.
is the part that people get stuck at because it's hard. And I know it is.
Mhm.
But the second phase of our evolution is as a soldier, but not as a
Mhm.
soldier for God, a soldier for the enemy.
Mhm.
I have, so many examples, but the one classic for us Christians is Saul to Paul's conversion.
Yeah.
Saul was a
Yeah.
persecutor of Christians. He was also a persecutor of Jews because he was a Jew.
Mhm.
And he then worked for the system, just like Matthew. Matthew's another example.
Yeah.
But then he became the third, which is what we're all called to be, which are warriors. It's when we
Mhm.
know that we are victims, we know that we've been working for the enemy, and we
Mhm.
decided to dislocate from the enemy, and we're going to declare war on the enemy. We don't
Yes.
defeat the enemy, we thrive in his presence.
Mm. Mm. If you could see me right now, you would see me cheering.
Listen, Kristen, I wish I could take credit for this. I really do. It's so fantastical. I wish
Yeah,
I
it's
could say that
amazing.
this was just, I'm so brilliant and I'm a genius. But I got to tell you, God downloaded this thing because
Yes.
it's not just one book now. It's a
Volumes.
entire franchise. It's 30
Mhm.
children's illustrated books. It's designed to take us into battle
Mhm.
along with scripture
Mhm.
and not just as Christians, but
Yeah.
this franchise speaks to atheists. They're
Mhm.
buying the book.
Mhm.
And we can
Mm.
talk more about how that works, but I'll pause there for a minute.
Yeah, I mean, I just feel like, have you heard of the Seven Mountains of Influence too?
Yeah, it's been paralleled a little bit to that. And
Yeah, but this is
I,
deeper. This goes
yeah,
way like, and I'm just here going, uh, uh, yeah, this is so good.
yeah. And
I
the Seven
love.
Mountains, yeah, the Seven
Oh,
Mountains is really, you won't find a non-Christian picking up the Seven Mountains. Let's put it that way. But I think
right.
there's some good stuff in there. Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I just love the picture of the tree as well, right? So
Mm,
you're moving from the soil to the appendages of the tree and
right.
just that visual of, just the warrior too. This is incredible. So are all of your books geared towards children or do you have adult books as well?
Yeah. So The Voice of the Heart is an adult book. It's a 500-page manifesto. You
Okay.
don't have to read. So a lot of people are like, I'm not touching 500 pages. Listen, even for me, 500 pages is hard to read. There's a
Yeah.
reading plan in the back that
Hmm.
allows you to go through different tracks based on your reading aptitude. When I say aptitude, I'm not talking about
Oh,
intelligence. I'm talking about,
right.
some
Like,
people need to gloss over, but you want to
hmm.
go and you want to do a fast track and still get the framework. You can do that. So there's different reading
Okay.
plans in that book. There's also
Okay.
a devotional. It's called, but it's not a traditional devotional. It's very popular. It's called
Hmm.
Whispers from the Heart. Now, a lot of people that will be their entry point. So think of all these as entry points. They'll
Okay.
enter into the voice, into Whispers, which is a daily devotional, but it's really a cleanse. So every day, there's 30 days. Each day ties to the one of the 30 chapters of the book. Day one, chapter one. Day two, chapter two. And
Mhm.
it's instructive. There's prayer, there's meditation, there's all kinds of good stuff, but it takes 15 minutes, or it could take all day, whatever you want to do with it. It could be a small group study, and it's designed to be used over and over again. And what happens is people get that, and then they go and get the big book.
Okay.
Now, there's two other groups of properties. This is very exciting because it just launched about 4 weeks ago and it's already just broken records. And that is the Growing in the Garden series, the story of sapling, which is a little seed that grows up, and each of the 30 books parallel the respective devotional day and chapter of the masterwork. So guess what? A family can now have conversation about real stuff. Like, think about talking about media and entertainment with your 4-year-old and how it's infiltrated. But in the children's books, which have amazing characters, it's contextualized. It's not the war connotation, the war lingo. You know, it's about the garden. It's called the Garden of Weed and Wonder.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, the Garden of Weed and Wonder.
That
It's so much
speaks to me.
Oh, it's so rich. And people are going bananas for it. And we're actually having a production problem now because book 2, so this all 30 books have been created.
Yeah.
Book 1 is out. We've transitioned off of, we're not going through Amazon or Barnes and Noble anymore. I'm actually having a little battle with Barnes and Noble and Ingram Spark because I want to pull the books off of their shelves. We want to only be direct because we don't want anyone having the relationship with the readers of the franchise. So it's really important. So that's going on. But book 2 is coming out. So book 1 is called The Backwards Berries. So remember we talked about chapter 1, The Invisible War.
Yes.
So book 1, The Backwards Berries, is Sapling goes into the garden. It's his first book. And he sees that everybody's running, all the carrots and the tomatoes and the sunflowers, they're all running like bananas to this part of the garden where there's these crazy electrified berries. And he ends up going there and he's using discernment, but he doesn't really know. And he tries one of the berries. He sees some of the, like he sees this tomato, I call him Tomato Head. He eats one of the berries and he gets sick. Then Sapling has one and he says, it felt like greatness, but now it feels like sadness. And so the child is learning discernment about things that are flashy. And at the, I don't want to give the whole book away, but he comes to the conclusion that, we have to, and by the way, there's extensive SEL reading programs in the book, so you can have conversations about every spread in the book with your child. And so you might say, well, how did you feel about that dress, Susie, when you wanted it so badly 2 weeks ago? Now you have it. Do you still feel the same way about it? And so they're learning discernment. But here's what's funny. A mother reached out to me. Yeah, a mother reached out to me a couple of days ago. She said she's just ordered the book and she loves the berries. And I said, that's the problem. I said, oh, thank God she bought the book because I don't want her teaching her kids to love the berries, right? So every book parallels all the way through 1 through 30. Now, there's one other category. So I didn't want to leave young adults and readers of novels and novelettes and whatever else you want to call it. So there's a book I'm just in my final line edits called Thin Places. Thin Places is actually a Celtic characterization of a place where the veil is torn. So think about The Wizard of Oz, which, by the way, has a lot of manifestation of signaling and like all content. There's been brainwashing us and our children for decades, hundreds of years maybe. But the veil, when it's brought back, it reveals the wizard. So in Thin Places, it's a story about a community which is kind of suffering because a factory left. And it centers around one young lady who, it's got family dynamic. It actually parallels it's a novel that parallels the masterwork. But what happens is this community is infiltrated by a company called Planeteer. Now, for those of you, I'm not going to say what it kind of sounds like. I don't want to get
Hmm.
sued.
Yeah.
But Planeteer is the name of this company that moves into the neighborhood and starts turning it upside down with surveillance and
Hmm.
all kinds of good stuff. But it's a really cool story, and it uses a part of my imagination, which I, look, I wrote the non-fictional masterwork.
Hmm.
It was just a dump of really everything I've experienced over my 60-something years of life. But when I
Yeah.
did the creative stuff, like when I started doing the children's books, I went to town because I'm a goofball and I love
Yeah, I love that.
characters. My wife has hidden all my puppets. And my 10-month-old took one of the puppets I gave her as a chef, and she took the
Oh,
jacket off and she started undressing the puppet. So my,
fun.
my daughter was upset. But I'm a kid. And
You are a kid. Like we're
yeah, and
called to be like childlike faith, right?
childlike faith. So I went nuts. So since the 30 book children's series is done, it's
Yeah.
just final illustrations for the last, 20 books or 15 books. But I'm going to have another series where Sapling is going to try. Now he's a tree at that point.
Yeah.
He's going to travel the world and it's going to be a cultural geography experience from
Oh,
country to country,
wow.
30 different countries.
That's amazing. Where can people find your books then, if they can't be
Yeah.
found on the mainstream main systems?
Yeah, so voiceoftheheartbooks.com. It's a very deep website. You can go there, you can probably
Okay.
spend all week on it. There's a lot of content. It's very descriptive about whether it's the
Hmm.
SEL programming around the children's books or the
Okay.
the the framework. People should just
Hmm.
go there and really peruse
Okay.
it on their computer. Get off your device, go to a computer
Okay.
where you can
Yeah.
see it and share it with your spouse and your family and
Yeah.
try to understand it. And by the way, I'm accessible right now anyway. I mean,
Okay.
you reach me
Yeah.
at info@voiceoftheheartbooks.com. Excuse me. I'm
Okay.
happy to try to respond. If you have questions, you have comments, criticisms. And also the other thing is the children's book, you could buy a book at a time, or you can
Okay.
join what I call the Garden Circle Club or Garden Circle
Garden.
membership, where you opt into a membership. There's no cost. You just
Yeah.
automatically get notified of when each
Yeah.
book comes out. You decide whether you want it or not, or you can actually have order delivery. That's your option. And there's some benefits to that as well.
That's a great way to go about it. I love it. I love this. And I have one more question about this.
Yeah.
Did you ever think you'd write books? I love to ask this question to people
Yeah.
who are
So,
30.
no, yeah, I wrote poems as a young child. They weren't even poems, they were limericks and they were silly. But I liked
Okay.
writing and I've written music. I've written a lot of music. But I wrote up when I was in entertainment. I had worked for Eddie Murphy for a number of years for his organization
Hmm.
and, knew a lot of people, obviously. And so I said, oh, well, I'm going to write a screenplay. So I wrote a screenplay, got picked up by ICM and never got made into a movie, but it was a
Yeah.
struggle. A screenplay is like 100, 110 pages. And it's, of course,
Oh,
formatted differently. So it's not that many words relative to a book.
hmm.
But it was a struggle to get that done. I thought I was never going to finish it.
Oh,
When I
yeah.
wrote Voice of the Heart, it came from two things.
Hmm.
We would go places that I would tell people if we were at a restaurant or sitting at a bar having a glass of wine, and I get into a
Hmm.
conversation about this experience or my testimony, people would say,
Yeah.
"You got to write a book." And my wife would say, "He's got one in him, but he hasn't
Yeah.
written it yet." And I said, "Well, I'm going
Yeah.
to write." And they would say, "Here, take my number when you get the book." And I was like,
Oh,
so when I sat down, my wife said,
yeah.
write the book.
I love
She's
your
usually
wife.
right. She's usually right about everything. So I
Yeah.
wrote the book. When I wrote it, it was a toil. I wrote 75 drafts of a 500-page book.
Yeah. 5 drafts.
Yeah.
How long did it take you from like start to finish, would you say?
Yeah. Day and night, when I'm available, because I do have a day job. It was about 2 years, but that was because I had accumulated notes and presentations over
Yeah.
12 years. And some from even further back than that, but lots of notes. I mean, recorded notes, written notes, typed notes, you name it. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was the assembly. Those were the pieces of the puzzle that ultimately
Yeah.
would form the picture.
Yeah, going back to that puzzle. I love
Yeah.
this. Greg, you are a gem. I'm
Thank you.
definitely going to check out your website. There's so much language you're using here that is like a lot of what the Lord's been showing me over the years. So thank you for coming on today. I would love for you to just share as we're wrapping up today, if you don't mind. Maybe a final word of encouragement, wisdom, or hope for the person who's listening in today, because I do this for the one and beyond, of course.
Yeah, yeah. So there's two quotes, or rather two lines in the book. The first one and the last one, which are like bookends. The first line in the book,
Mhm.
which, even again, for a unbeliever, non-believer,
Mhm.
or an atheist, anybody, it still resonates. And it goes like this. When the snake moved into the garden, there went the neighborhood.
Mhm.
And that's the reckoning. That's what I want. I want people to, that's that glass thing. Oh, Greg, it's half empty. No, I want people to be really
Mhm.
upset that they've been living like this is all there is. And then the last line of the book is that when you're all out of hope, the only thing left is hope.
Mhm.
That is that's one of the few lines of everything I've written
Mhm.
that still, when I say it, it
Yeah.
rivets me. It wells in me
Yeah.
for not just myself, but for everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody that I come in contact, everyone I'm going to come in contact with, the entire face of the planet's,
Mhm.
occupations. I feel that for
Mhm.
everybody.
Yes.
And then, the last thing I want to say is there is one quote that I think we need to carry
Mhm.
as Christians, especially now, because
Mhm.
we've got an attack on Christianity. It's coming from within and from
Yes.
without. There's politicization, there's all kinds of stuff. There's a revival too, but
Mhm.
it's trying to get squelched. And so
Yeah.
here's what I want to leave with my brothers and sisters.
Mhm.
Those who pursue the truth are more faithful to the truth than those who know the truth.
Mm.
Those who pursue the truth are more faithful to the truth than those who know the truth. Now, why do I say that? And why do I say it like that? Because as
Mhm.
Christians, we say Jesus is the truth.
Mhm.
But if we really look at the people who were closest, I'm talking about humans that were closest
Yeah.
to, to God in history, they walked with
Mhm.
God. And you don't walk with
Mhm.
somebody you walk with somebody you want to know. And so it's
Yeah.
so important as Christians that we humble ourselves and say, we don't know Jesus,
Mhm.
but we want to know him and to
Mhm.
live in that power because
Mhm.
that's what forges the relationship. That's what keeps us close to him is wanting to know him. If we already knew him, then we
Mhm.
wouldn't need to know anymore.
Mm.
So I call on my brothers and sisters to pursue the truth. Always pursue it.
Yes.
Don't know it, pursue
Mm.
it.
Mm. Wow. Greg, thank you so much for being here today. We might have to have you on another time in the future if you're open to that. Uh,
Absolutely.
Thank you again. So I'm going to close with the Hope Unlocked anchoring verse. It's may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace as you trust in him, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may abound in hope. And that's Romans 15:13. So thank you for being a brave voice who's setting so many free. Keep going, listeners. Keep trusting and keep living unlocked. I'll be back with another episode next week. Thank you.